So next up, we're talking about the link between mental health and nutrition with Nicola Moore.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, but I'm sad that session on hair's finished. I was really enjoying it.
Really good, wasn't it? It was so interesting.
Bright light.
Oh, it's amazing. So Nicola has been a forward-thinking nutritional therapist since 2004. She held the role of senior academic at the Institute of Optimum Nutrition for over 12 years. And her mission is to champion positive health messages and relationships with food. So today we're going to discuss how to take our mental health into our own hands through the food we eat.
What a fabulous topic to be discussing, because it's such a big one, isn't it? And such an important one. So Nicola, can you tell me a bit about your fad-free nutrition philosophy, just so we can all familiarise ourselves a little bit with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working in nutrition for a really good long amount of time now, and right from the very early days of seeing clients, I was troubled by the people that were coming to clinic who were really deeply anxious about what they should be eating, and feeling that they should be following very restrictive diets, perhaps to reach optimal health or improvements in the digestive system or whatever. But those things don't really seem to work over the long term, and it really affects your relationship with food if you're constantly, even if you're eating healthily, if you're really constantly having that voice in your head about what you should or shouldn't be eating, that's not actually a healthy mindset to be in, potentially. So I prefer to stick away from the fads and the trends that come and go, and really look at what the research tells us about what we know about longevity, health, and the sorts of diets that work really well for that, but then making it really personalized and individualized for the person sitting in front of me, because we are all completely unique. So we all have our own genetics, we all have a different microbiome. So our the gut bacteria that are living within us, that has totally changed the landscape when it comes to understanding nutrition and what we should be eating. Our digestive systems are all different, and depending on our life stage, that influences how we process our food. So whether you're, if you're going through your fertile years, or your perimenopausal or postmenopausal, for example, that completely, depending on genetics, can completely change the way in which you process food. So and that's another big thing. I work with mostly women. I see a lot of men as well, but mostly women. And women that I'm seeing tend to be looking for the holy grail of what can I eat all the time to give me the constant abundant energy that I want, good night's sleep, good mental health. And for most women, because of our hormonal fluctuations, there isn't a holy grail. So depending on the time of the month is going to actually influence what you should or shouldn't be eating, and your food choices and things like that. So it's about personalizing it, really.
And can you tell us about the role of nutrition in relation to mental health? I know that's very generalized.
Well, I think that food, we are what we eat, or we are what we eat and we absorb, and also what our gut microbiome likes to do. And all of these things influence our brain chemistry. So the food that we eat is making up things like our neurotransmitters. So the serotonin, dopamine, all of these brain chemicals that are influencing how we feel, like our emotions, whether we're happy, whether we're motivated. It's actual nutrition and nutrients that allow those chemicals to work efficiently. Our brain is 60% fat. So, the sorts of fats that we eat are going to influence how our brains work, and our bacteria in our gut produce chemicals that are very, very similar to serotonin and dopamine and these brain chemicals. And they can transfer directly from the gut through this thing called the vagus nerve up to the brain. So our gut bacteria are kind of controlling us. which is a bit spooky. But they've looked on mice models and transferred microbiomes from particular species of mice that are known to be quite relaxed in temperament versus species that are more agitated. And when they transfer the microbiomes, they see the behaviours changing in the mice. So it's powerful.
Can you tell us at this stage what happens to our digestive system and gut when we are under stress?
So I mean, I suppose you can look at stress in two different ways. So you've got like an acute stressor. So say, for example, you're in a situation where you're running late for a meeting, or something quite that about, or you've got a big work event, or something's happening, or maybe you've had an argument with someone and you have that horrible butterflies in your tummy, that kind of feeling in the pit of your stomach. That is what's happening there is sort of an acute stress response, which is fundamentally being propelled by a hormone called adrenaline. And one of the jobs of adrenaline is to ensure that all of our energy is diverted to the parts of the body that are really important for us, so our brain, our muscles and all of that. And to digest food isn't necessarily an important thing to be doing, so you'll see a quick down regulation in digestive function, and normally someone would lose their appetite if there's something big's happened. And then you've got sort of chronic long-term stress, or chronic anxiety, which is a bit more insidious, but you're having the same reactions happening in the body, but almost the effects of them are dumbed down because they're happening frequently and regularly, but that impact on digestive function is still going on. So you can see over time that things like people might start getting things like indigestion or heartburn or bloating or IBS type symptoms, and it's not necessarily something to do with their digestive system or even the food that they're eating. It's more to do with the stress that they're under and how that stress response is down regulating all of their digestive secretions, so having an effect on how they're digesting and absorbing.
So if you saw a client who was stressed, is part of your treatment plan to de-stress them with things like yoga?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, you can't, I think as Sally Ann was saying a moment ago, you can't necessarily take the stresses out of somebody's life, but what you can do is help the body's adaptation to stress.
Yeah.
And you can also help people develop the tools that allow them to respond to stress differently. So, this is not nutrition related, but more lifestyle factors like things like mindfulness or meditation, really good for signaling to the brain to just relax its triggering of particular hormones that are precursors to our stress hormones. So, and that has been, that's been proven quite conclusively. That sort of thing can work really well. But also you can have stressors on the body from your diet as well. So if you're eating lots of sugary foods, or if you're having lots and lots of caffeine, or if you're skipping meals, if you're not eating enough, those also triggering stress responses. So your brain just knows, your brain can identify stress, but it doesn't necessarily care whether that stress is a real threat to you, or whether it's a fact that and that you're in some state of famine, or whether you're just thinking, I feel like I should be trying to lose weight, and I don't know what to eat, and so I'll just skip meals. All of those things are impacting a stress response. So looking at the whole piece, and putting in nutrients as well to support. So magnesium is a wonderful mineral for it. When you've got like stress happening, this adrenaline is flying through these synapses, these little neurons that are traveling at lightning speed around the body. And what they've shown with magnesium is that can come in the way of the synapse and almost back the adrenaline and calm things down. So you really could have a situation where we would be all sat in a room and something scary happen, and if my magnesium status is higher than yours, I will be genuinely less scared than you because of the magnesium. So this is, what a wonderful way to help people manage their stress.
Where do you find magnesium?
So in green leafy vegetables and nuts and seeds, you get it in, you're going to get it in, green leafy vegetables are a wonderful source of magnesium. But, there's a whole range of sort of grains as well, going to give you some magnesium. Meat will give you some magnesium. So you're going to get it in a wide range of different foods.
And do you recommend having green juices then and using those green leafy vegetables?
Yeah, so they can work well if you're really, really stressed. I think the bottom line is to ideally you want to be working on managing the stresses in your life and then supporting the physiology of it with things like that. So yeah, green juices can work very well from that perspective. And also things like chamomile tea have been shown to be quite helpful for calming as well. But also doing things like eating regular big meals. People are sometimes shocked by how much I'm encouraging them to eat. I don't want people to eat till they feel sick, obviously, but you want to eat. I think a lot of us women, we kind of spend our whole lives just thinking I should leave that, or I shouldn't, that's too big, or leaving a meal and not feeling quite satisfied. I think I see that a lot with people, and that because that is a stressor, by building really nice, balanced, filling meals, that itself can be a really, really good.
So are you talking about sort of 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch and supper, dinner?
Yes. Yeah.
And what about sort of that fast in between then and no snacking?
Yes. So ideally you want to get to the point, if you can, where you're just having your big balanced meals and you don't need to snack. Now, years ago we thought that snacking was the important thing to be doing, and it would help blood sugar levels, which is again, it's an important thing to have going on. But then with all this more information that we've learned about the gut, and the microbiome, and thinking again about mental health and how you want to be helping your gut microbiome to be really diverse so that it's producing those brain chemicals that are helpful, and also producing the chemicals actually that will actually propel us towards more healthy food choices, because they are governing our hunger and fullness and our food choices as well. So the more you feed your bacteria the right sorts of foods, the more you will want those sorts of foods. But when we started learning more about this gut thing, having a break in between meals really allows the gut to be able to sort of recharge, for inflammation to come down, which is for mental health really important. So there's a clear link with inflammation and depression. We know that. So having those breaks between meals really brings that inflammation down and allows the diversity of the bacteria to thrive.
So what would you recommend though, if someone has problems with anxiety and it's quite chronic and they're in that state of fight or flight and they find they can't eat because their stomach is in knots? What do you do for someone like that who's really struggling with that?
Yeah, so I don't think with anyone I work with, I can't really think of anyone where you just nail it straight away. It's about slow and steady wins the race, really, and making changes that are not overwhelmed. The last thing I want to do is overwhelm somebody who's anxious, or add to their stress in any way. So if somebody's appetite isn't good, sometimes it's about us to begin with just trying to bring down those overall stresses, and things that are like soups, smoothies, juices, things that are going to be easy to digest, especially if their digestive system really has been impacted. And then sometimes, honestly, it's about finding, as someone's appetite gets back, and I speak from experience with this because I'm the sort of person that if I'm really stressed, my appetite deserts me. There are other people who get really stressed and they want to eat. Just different people react differently. But sometimes if you can start opening that window to improving things, then looking at, what's a lovely meal that you've once had that you really fancy. Sometimes I take clients back to their childhood, and So you can and you can make a plate that's not overwhelming. So I was talking very recently to someone who has been through a huge amount of stress, a huge amount of personal stress, appetite gone, hair falling out. I'm going to be getting her to buy one of those things. And lots of things going on for her like that. And when we started sort of getting the appetite back, we were talking about childhood or comfort, and we put on her making herself a meal on a little plate that would be a couple of fish fingers and some peas. And we talked about fish fingers being crispy and crunchy and salty, and how she would cook them. Would she grill them? Would she bake them in the oven? And at the end of that, she was thinking, she was like, "Oh, I'm looking forward to eating that." And that was just enough. That was a meal that started to
appetite back.
Yeah. So
you kind of used words that really resonated with her to get her to imagine what this delicious meal would be like. So you really worked with how she saw it. And
yeah, I think that our relationships with food are really complicated, and this is why I'm so nervous about ever being too much about what you shouldn't be doing, because you can quite honestly cause more harm than good. I've seen it. So yeah, it's about the mindfulness and connecting with food, and a lot of us have lost the connection. So even thinking about, how are you going to chop this vegetable? I know it's silly, but do you have nice knives? What's your kitchen like? Do you have the radio on? How are we going to make this a pleasurable experience for you? Or even thinking about even where food's come from, how it's grown, and the love that's gone into that. And it's really, you can really bring things to life in a different way that people aren't expecting. And then when you start talking about putting food together in a nice, pretty, colourful way, I'm really, again, like, for people who don't have much appetite or whatever, even using little bowls and cutting fruit up into little bits and having them in a little bowl of olives or a little bowl of pistachio nuts, or just and putting those 3 bowls together in a nice,
it's like a ritual almost.
Pardon?
It makes it almost like a ritual.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
You're sort of broadening out their perspective on food being one thing, and you're broadening out this whole experience that they could have around it.
Yeah. Because really, to eat is to love yourself, isn't it? It's one of the ultimate acts of kindness to yourself. Lovely reframe that for someone who's struggling with eating and how they perceive food and so forth. I think that sometimes you need to learn to sort of love your body, love you, and then you can approach food from that perspective as well. But the other thing for anxiety that is massive is to really watch what you're drinking. So, for example, caffeine, if you have any form of anxiety, caffeine can be a real problem, and it can be transformative to take it out of the diet. So you can switch to just a decaf, and because caffeine as a stimulant, its job is to trigger the production of adrenaline. That is what a stimulant does. And it's the adrenaline that's giving us this palpitations and this feeling. So I would use caffeine for me. I suffer with anxiety, so, and I really respond in quite an extreme way to caffeine if I'm anxious. So during this whole lockdown, I have not been able to have any caffeine. I had some right at the beginning, and for 2 days I really felt rough from it. But I can have a nice, good quality decaf, and it's fine for me.
Would that be even a cup of tea, like a cup of Earl Grey tea, or?
No. I think that you can set your limit and see how you feel with it, and you can make it weaker or stronger, can't you?
Yes.
So I think that's. But I've got some clients who caffeine any form with teas or coffees, or even dark chocolate, because I'll be often saying to people, I have some dark chocolate instead of other sorts of chocolate, you know, that for them might be too much. So it's about finding your own personal thing. But if it's worth experimenting with, it's what if anxiety is a problem and you notice that you are having caffeinated drinks, it is worth doing that experiment with yourself for a few days to see how you feel. I mean, if you're having a lot of caffeine and you suddenly stop it, you may get a headache, you know. But the other thing is alcohol is also watching alcohol consumption. So if you're having a lot of alcohol, again, you know, with this lockdown, I think it's being a lot of people's saving grace. I'm seeing, you know, locally you've seen sort of people arriving back from Costco, unloading all of their beer and wine. And you know, I love a glass of wine. But for me at the moment, I know that if I were to, I think having a small glass of wine with a meal actually is for me is fine, and it's actually quite nice. But if I would have any more, it would probably affect my quality of sleep, and that again, that changes your physiology into the next day, and your stress response is going to be slightly different from having a sort of not such good sleep.
Yeah, I can't tolerate alcohol at all. I mean, even like half a glass, and I'm like, I feel the effects so strongly if I have any kind of alcohol at all. It's really strange. Can I just ask you something? You mentioned something about gut, what you absorb nutritionally. How do you know if someone, say they're eating regular meals but they're not actually absorbing the nutrients? What sort of symptoms would display with something like that might?
Well, I guess if someone's got, you know, if they're displaying symptoms of just being below par and they've got digestive problems and they've got diarrhea and things like that, you might start asking the question, are they absorbing? Problems with issues of the small intestine from a bacterial composition can affect levels of our digestive enzymes and stuff. The best way to really try and understand is to do testing and see what your nutrient status is. Really, you know, things like though, if your hair is falling out, again, you know, talking about the ferritin and that sort of thing, that's a potential red flag for not absorbing as well as you could, but it could be other factors as well.
And what about gluten?
So gluten's found in wheat, barley and rye and malt and things, soya sauce and Marmite and lots of hidden things. It's a protein that is has been shown to be, for quite a lot of people, quite problematic, either genetically or other, with how sort of causing some localized inflammation in the gut. And so that can affect absorption and give digestive symptoms, but other symptoms as well, like things like brain fog and fatigue and so on. So gluten, there is a lot of interest in the role of gluten in health. I think one of the major problems that we have is not necessarily the gluten molecule so much, or gluten protein. It's the fact that we consume it so often. And that we're often consuming it in a highly processed way. So the bread that we buy from the supermarket is highly processed with lots of emulsifiers and other ingredients in that. That could be more of a problem than the gluten, who knows? So I think the problem that we have with wheat-based products is that it reduces variety of other foods potentially. You could very easily have toast or cereal at breakfast time, a sandwich at lunchtime, pasta in the evening. You know, it's very easy. But with that, you're not getting this diversity. So, you know, crowding those things out with other foods is good, or looking for more traditionally made products like a sourdough bread that's been traditionally made, that has got very few ingredients in it and has been fermented, may work better than even, you know, may be tolerated better than a gluten-free bread, because, you know, a lot of the gluten-free products, when you look at the ingredients, there's quite a troubling list of ingredients on there. So usually, you know, in all honesty with clients, I am looking to crowd out gluten more from the place of I'm wanting more diversity, and by getting the gluten out, it forces different foods to come in.
So what foods do you recommend then instead of sandwiches and pasta?
So, well, I would be suggesting to people to do things like, if they want to have, I mean, I gave up on the spiralising a couple of years ago. I mean, I was all for it to begin with, but it's just so boring to wash it up after. But using vegetables instead of pasta can work really effectively. Yeah. I'm a big fan of like the lentil pastas and the chickpea pastas. They're quite filling. They've got good fibre in them, a little bit protein. They work really nicely. So you're looking to just at lunchtime, getting people to have big salads, but not your sort of, I don't know, I was brought up in the 80s where it was all iceberg lettuce and tomatoes and cucumber, you know, and you were left feeling, I was like,
salad,
salad cream.
Exactly, Heinz salad cream,
But you know, really making a salad really delicious and building a salad. So I often coach people to, you know, how are you going to build your meal? What questions are you asking? What can we have handy that you can, I sort of call them sling together lunches, things in your cupboard. You can be going, I'm going to put this in really quick and easy. Before you know it, you've got a great big bowl of lovely, delicious variety, colour, texture.
Things like chickpeas and loads of different vegetables and sauerkraut.
Oh, delicious. Yeah, wonderful.
You never sell me when you say sauerkraut though, Lise.
I tell you what, you need to
hang on about sauerkraut.
You keep going on about sauerkraut.
There's a brand called the Culture Collective, and they do some lovely sauerkrauts, and I recently bought one that I hadn't seen before, that's fennel.
Oh wow, sounds good.
Apple and dill.
Oh,
and I tell you, it is just delicious.
What's it called? Culture Company.
Culture Collective.
Culture Collective. Oh, I'll look that up. Good tip. We've only got 3 minutes left, and I'd really love it if you could just name a couple of really good mood foods.
Yeah.
Mood foods. So let's go.
So like.
Well, any protein is a good mood food. So protein is meat, fish, nuts, seeds, eggs, dairy products, you know, tofu. Chickpeas, lentils, free peas, like
beans,
from the garden, frozen peas. So they've got good amounts of protein in. Protein really is, it's giving you the raw materials for your brain chemistry. So that's number one. I'd say number two, either oily fish, or if you don't eat fish, walnuts.
Walnuts?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, both of those are a good source of omega-3 fats, which are really good for the brain. And I'd say, let's have a think. Thirdly, I suppose it would be green leafy vegetables.
Oh yeah.
Kale.
Yeah, broccoli, cabbage.
Okay. I eat tons of kale. Love a thing of roasted kale.
That's your magnesium, which I think, you know, based on what we've talked about, is probably a useful thing to have. Yeah, and to watch the caffeine.
Yes.
What about things like avocado?
Yeah, lovely.
Avocado, yeah.
Yes, yeah, they're lovely. And they're really filling, aren't they?
Yeah, but it's good fats. So it's good fats are good for mood boosting as well.
Absolutely. Fats are our friend. The fats that we want to avoid are the fats from deep fried processed stuff. But anything where you look at it and it's an actual food that has come from the earth, or an animal that's been raised properly with a good diet, that you're going to be getting fats that are really supportive for your health, and they won't make you fat. It's the sugar that would make you, that's more of the problem.
And what talking about sugar, what if you do have a dip in the afternoon and you need sugar to pick you up? What would you recommend?
Well, maybe going for some dark chocolate and some nuts or something like that, or
dates.
Very, very sugary dates. So I'd always say, with your date, open it up and stuff in a walnut.
Yeah.
Nut butter, just to anchor it down, just to anchor down sugar with the protein. But also, if you're having a dip in the afternoon, backtrack and look at your breakfast and look at your lunch.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, are the timings working for me? Do I need to have, do I need to work on when I'm eating? Should I be, and am I eating enough? But yeah, or do I need to bring my dinner forward?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Thank you so much, Nicola.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's fascinating.
I've got to have you on all night. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.